Welcome, everybody. It's Monday, November 17th, 2014, and we're talking about military spending today and the claim that austerity is decimating the U.S. military. Is that so? We're going to ask Winslow Wheeler, an expert in this area. Winslow Wheeler is director of the Strauss Military Reform Project of the Project on Government Oversight. He worked on national security issues for 31 years for members of the U.S. Senate and for the U.S. General Accounting Office. You can find him all over the place on 60 Minutes, in The Washington Post, in Politico, in Mother Jones, in Barron's, on C-SPAN, on National Public Radio. He's the author of 2 books, The Wastrels of Defense, How Congress Sabotages National Security, and Military Reform, An Uneven History and an Uncertain Future. Winslow Wheeler, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I wanted to have you in particular because of this article you have, The War Against Austerity, in the American Conservative magazine. And this article, the purpose of it is to overturn the conventional wisdom that, I suppose by definition, with the conventional wisdom, it goes unquestioned that there has been an unprecedented period of austerity imposed on the Pentagon. This has made us terribly vulnerable, and everybody, all right-thinking people, know that it needs to be reversed. And you go through every aspect of these claims relentlessly in this piece. I want to start off with the what austerity question, because oftentimes when there's a complaint about austerity, you look closely, and there really isn't any austerity. But yet, in this case, isn't it true that the Pentagon budget has been reduced, so don't they have a case here?
Yes and no. That's the core of the whole problem. In 2010, we had a peak in post-World War II spending at something over $700 billion for the Pentagon. It's come down to about $560 billion. It's a significant reduction. However, if you look at post-World War II spending and adjust for inflation, that's very important. The $560 billion that they propose we now spend for 2015 is at the same level as the peak of spending under Ronald Reagan. If you compare current spending, the $560 billion, to average Cold War spending, that average was $355 billion. In other words, we're about $200 billion above what we spent when we faced a couple hundred divisions in Europe from the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, and a dogmatically communist China, and all kinds of much greater problems than we have right now. Poverty is not our problem. Lack of money is not their problem in the Pentagon. The problem is how they're wasting the money, and they're wasting it in huge chunks.
I definitely want to talk about that. On this general theme, though, you have in here a chart comparing the U.S. government spending on the military with the spending of all the countries, or 5 countries, that are perceived as being enemies or potential enemies. And you've got China, Russia, Iran, Syria, and North Korea. And you've got them right side by side. What do these figures show us?
It's amazing. If you add all of them together in the most recent budget data available from international operations, depending on whose estimate you take for what the so-called bad guys spend, we spend either twice or 3 times what they spend, all added together. Again, money is not our problem. We have huge gobs of it. That's not our problem.
And what's interesting is that comparison you just made takes as its base of understanding that $560 billion is the amount being spent by the U.S. or some figure thereabouts. But as you've shown repeatedly, the real figure of U.S. military spending is actually considerably higher because there's more military-related or defense-related spending than just what you find in the Pentagon budget.
Right. Defense spending is not only in the Pentagon budget. We spend something over $20 billion in the Department of Energy budget for nuclear weapons. We spend something over $50 billion in the Department of Homeland Security for anti-terrorism. We spend well over $100 billion to take care of the problems of past wars in the Department of Veterans Affairs. We have arms aid to Afghanistan, Israel, and a long list of countries, economic assistance for our own national security purposes. And there's other stuff, too. They bury some DOD retirement money in the Department of Treasury, for example, a big chunk, about $20 billion. Add it all together, and we're talking about just almost $1 trillion in 1 year. And people complain that the estimates for the Chinese defense budget is too low because we don't count what amounts to their Coast Guard and so on and so forth. Well, if you want to play that game, the commensurate figure for the United States is close to $1 trillion.
And yet, Barack Obama recently used the word draconian to refer to cuts going on at the Pentagon. Now, Fox News told me that Barack Obama is a pinko commie who wants America to be taken over. How could he make a statement like that?
Well, Barack Obama's a coward, just like George Bush was and just like Bill Clinton was. They don't want to they don't want to be accused of being anti-defense, so they get the biggest shovel they can find and heave money over the the Treasury wall to the Pentagon. It's politics. It's domestic politics. They want to protect their right flank politically. Democrats don't want to be accused by the Republicans of being anti-defense, so they preemptively capitulate and heave money, just like the Republicans do when they beat their breast pretending they're pro-defense by heaving monies in equally large shovelfuls. Barack Obama is not being stingy with the Pentagon, but he's scared to death of being accused of being stingy with the Pentagon.
We certainly could use a Nixon to China situation here, where somebody comes in whose credentials on the military no one can question, so that he could then say, we need to make cuts. But it doesn't seem like there's any such person on the horizon. I mean, Nixon actually did go to China, but I don't see anybody on the horizon who really wants to get in and say, all right, everybody, you all know I have all this military experience. You all know I have a great reputation when it comes to the military, but enough's enough. It's corrupt. It's bankrupting the country, et cetera. I don't see that person on the horizon. Do you?
Well, I don't entirely agree. Senator Tom Coburn from Oklahoma understood the problem and tried to do a few things. Unfortunately, he's retiring. He's toast. Everybody's looking at John McCain, who is going to be chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. It depends on which John McCain we get. If we get the John McCain that exercised some real oversight when the very corrupt Boeing air refueling tankers deal was going down, and he put an end to that, and some people went to jail, literally, that would be great. However, that same John McCain also had a Lockheed employee as his chief of staff a few years ago, running his Defense Department work. The John McCain we most frequently get talks a lot and talks quite tough, and then nothing happens. And so I'm hoping that we get the good John McCain. I'm concerned that we will get the John McCain that more frequently shows up. It's very entertaining, talks tough, then nothing happens.
Well, let's talk about what happens when the Pentagon does get a lot of additional money, what we saw during the period from the September 11th attacks up through 2010. There was all kinds of money being shoveled at the Pentagon, all kinds of additional money over and above what it was expecting to get. And what did the Pentagon do with it? What did the United States wind up getting from all that money?
It's really counterintuitive. We appropriated over 10 years, from 2001 to 2011, we appropriated about $1 trillion to fight the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's put that to the side for a moment. We also increased the base Pentagon budget, the non-war part of Pentagon spending, by another $1 trillion. And as a result of that extra $1 trillion from what was planned, we got a Navy and Air Force that was smaller in 2010 than it was in 2001, and the Army grew by puny 2 brigade combat teams. That was not a newer, smaller weapons inventory. It was an older weapons inventory. We also raided the operation and maintenance budget, which is one of the key parts of the Pentagon budget, and reduced training. Didn't increase it, reduced it. We literally got, for an extra $1 trillion, a Defense Department that was smaller, older, and less trained. Now that the money's going south, all that negative stuff is accelerating. Now they are pretending that, if you give us more money again, we'll fix all these problems, because they're complaining about the lack of readiness, the old weapons, and the shrinking inventory. But they've not changed any of their thinking, and it is literally guaranteed that if we heave more money at them yet again, business as usual is going to prevail, and all these negative forces will continue.
Now, in this article, you don't talk about it, but you have in other pieces. I'd like to ask you to explain to my listeners something that I've talked about here and there, but mainly because I learned about it from you, and that is these strategies known as front-loading and political engineering. Are they still getting away with these, and what are these things?
I'll do it fairly well. The front-loading is pretending at the beginning of a weapon system that will get this red-hot, super-duper weapon system for a bargain basement price. And, the system says, that's wonderful, let's support it. Then, while that initial funding is going on, they make sure they distribute the spending contracts politically. In other words, all over the 50 states and congressional districts, so that members in Congress are bought and paid for. While that's going on, the program stumbles along, and after some period of time, after everybody is committed to the program inside the Pentagon and inside Congress, we begin to get some test results. And the test results are that, this system really isn't performing all that great, and by the way, it's going to cost 2 or 3 times what we said it was going to cost. Classic example is the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. In the mid-1990s, the Air Force and Marine Corps were telling us, hey, this is going to be a great airplane. We're going to get it for $35 million a copy. Current price for the cheapest version of the F-35, the Air Force version, is $150 million per copy. And we've discovered through the testing process that it's having real problems. And by the way, the performance specifications for this airplane are hugely disappointing. They're very modest. Even if it performed as advertised, it would be a gigantic disappointment. But everybody's committed to the program because they bought in, thanks to the front loading and thanks to the political engineering of distributing the spending all over the place, so everybody gets a piece of the action. These are terms invented by Chuck Spinney, a Pentagon analyst, a brilliant guy, back in the 1990s. He told us this is going to happen with the F-35, and it did happen, and of course everybody's ignoring them.
From what I've been able to uncover, it seems like every 15 years or so, a blue ribbon commission is appointed to look into this type of corruption, and they come up with some sternly worded report, and then it goes in the garbage can and things go on as before. It seems like this strategy is so fiendishly clever that it almost defies any attempt at reform. Is there anything plausible that could be done about it?
Well, there's a lot of truth in what you say. Blue ribbon commissions are typically a device to stem an impulse to reform the Pentagon. Let us experts, the ones who created this problem and study this, will scratch your heads and come up with some wonderful sounding ideas. When you scratch the surface of those wonderful sounding ideas, they have lots of loopholes and waivers and all kinds of games to make sure that what they profess they want to achieve will never be achieved. So when somebody trots out the idea of we need to have a commission of experts study this, look, even just a casual look at the members of this Blue Ribbon Commission, and you'll see a long list of people who created the problem in the first place. Why we would want to listen to these people some more, I don't know, but sadly we often do.
Can you tell us who the New Democrats are? I hadn't heard that term, but I have a funny feeling I know what they're saying. And as you say, it's New Democrats repeating old bromides.
Right. These clowns put together themselves, declared themselves New Democrats. They went and asked industry how to reform the Pentagon. Industry told them, and that's their report. It's hilarious. Their recommendations are, we don't need these bothersome audits of weapon systems because they create too much red tape. We need to listen to industry more on setting requirements for weapons programs so that they can design whatever they please, not listening to combat history, but rather highly expensive, technological fantasies that sound good but never perform. It goes on. I mean, luckily, one of the few things I got some joy out of in the elections was the Democrats will be gone running the Senate, for example. I fear, however, the Republicans running things in the Senate is not going to be any different in really meaningful terms. I'm hoping somebody will show up who's a little bit more serious about some of these things and does some good oversight and is good at changing words into action. I'm hoping we're going to find that person, but I've been watching this system for more than 40 years, and I'm beginning to lose my enthusiasm for it.
Well, after that election, my thought was the good news is the Democrats lost, but the bad news is the Republicans won. Unfortunately,
exactly
right?
right.
I wish I weren't so cynical as I enter middle age here. All right, I want to look now. You've got some proposals for reform. I want to just focus in on a couple of them because really what they are identifying serious problems that currently exist, and that's really what I'm interested in. I don't know what the prospects for reform are, but I do want to know what the existing problems are. You have, for example, here an item, personal accountability. I'll read one sentence here. The fundamentally corrupt practice of allowing DoD acquisition managers in and out of uniform to routinely leave DoD and collect money from defense manufacturers and defense-related investment firms and their various associations is a clear indicator of a system in serious moral decay. Can you give us some specific examples of this, or is it just there's just so many of them that that is the system?
Well, it's routine behavior. The kind of example I think is one of the most pernicious and that nobody really talks about. Everybody talks about, isn't it shocking that generals go work for, Lockheed Martin or investment firms when they leave the Pentagon? Nobody pays any attention to what happens to congressional staff when they leave Capitol Hill. I worked on Capitol Hill for 30 years, and so I've been watching it. The ethic on the Senate and House Armed Services Committee is that you demonstrate that you're a really quality staffer if you leave Capitol Hill and go work not for industry. Those are the second-rate types do that. But the really first-rate people go work for the Pentagon. In other words, the operation that you're supposed to be exercising oversight over, that is supposed to be separate from you as a congressional operator, you're going to go work for them. And, of course, Pentagon only happens to hire people who, in their terms, behave themselves and don't have their bosses ask surly, unwanted questions in hearings, don't dig into weapons programs and find out what's really going wrong and why it may not be a good idea to just heave more money at this program. Those staffers, obviously, are not going to get a job offer from the Pentagon. But the ethic on the Senate and House Armed Services Committee is the really good people end up in the Pentagon. Imagine what that does for oversight. It kills it. And that, I would say, is the worst kind of thing that we pay no attention to.
One other thing I want to raise is the issue of financial accountability. To what extent is there any type of audit or any type of oversight of anything going on in the Department of Defense?
Well, again, they're playing games. In 1990, 25 years ago almost, Congress passed a bill to require every federal agency to be able to pass a very simple level audit. There's one agency that after 25 years still can't comply. It's obviously the Pentagon. The problem in the Pentagon is not that it flunks audits. It can't be audited. You flunk an audit when you track the money and find out it was not spent as intended. The Pentagon isn't that good. We can't track the money in the Pentagon. It would literally be an improvement for the Pentagon to be able to flunk an audit. They've got a plan. It's the third or fourth. They've set out a deadline. They just blew their first deadline, 2014. They're supposed to be able to have what's called a statement of budgetary resources. That means a balanced checkbook, basically. They bailed on that. They're going to pass their new reduced criterion, which is basically, we'll tell you what we can tell you, but not anything more than that. And in 2017, they plan to have a audit of stuff, basically, of where is everything, our stocks, as we, can we tell you where all of our equipment is, for example. Nowhere is in the plan is the idea of routinely auditing major weapons programs, let alone routinely auditing major weapons producers. It's a pathetic joke. So even 27 years after the passage of the 1990 Chief Financial Officers Act, the Pentagon still, in a meaningful sense, will not be auditable, and it will not be audited.
Now, I know where people can go if they want to be misled about the Department of Defense, but if they really want to learn the truth about what's going on, where can you direct them?
That's a really good question. I'd have to think about that. I can self-advertise my own stuff.
Please, I want you to.
Google the words Strauss Military Reform Project, and you'll find the materials we've generated over several years. If you also Google the Project on Government Oversight, pogo.org, you'll find the website there also. The best thing I can tell people is read my material, read other websites' materials when you think that they know what they're talking about, and they don't accept money from the contractors or from the Pentagon. That's going to eliminate a lot of think tanks in Washington, D.C. Read the Pentagon's own materials. The Pentagon website has lots of reports. In the fine print and the footnotes of a lot of those reports, you'll find lots of interesting things. Read government accountability reports, gao.org, .gov, G-O-V. Sometimes they cut it too much around the edges of, really good reports, but lots of those reports are important to read. Get involved, read up, get yourself informed. That's how you can contribute to the debate.
Well, as a matter of fact, I've read a little bit of Chuck Spinney, but almost everything I know about this subject I know from reading you. So I do want to urge people to look up the work of Winslow Wheeler and follow it so that you don't get snookered by people who have a vested interest in snookering you. Thanks so much for your time today. We all appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Very special guest tomorrow. Before I get to him, a reminder for my Liberty Classroom members. Tonight we're doing one of our live sessions. We do this once a month where I come on the screen and take your questions live with one or more of my faculty. Tonight it's going to be Jason Jewell, who's been a guest on this program. He teaches Western civilization for us. We're going to be doing questions for an hour starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, so just sign into your account over at libertyclassroom.com, and you'll see a link for live sessions. So go ahead and join us. Bring your questions or just come and watch, as I like to say. These are always fun, and yeah, you can watch the recording later, but where's the fun in that? Be a part of this. It's a lot of fun to do it. If you're not a member yet, of course, remember you can get 50% off a subscription using coupon code Austrian in all caps. We're commemorating the new course from Jeff Herbener, What's Wrong with Textbook Economics, so we're using coupon code Austrian in all caps. Tomorrow, Judge Andrew Napolitano joins us. We're going to talk about his new book, Suicide Pact, about the expansion of executive power. This is the most important book the judge has written. You're not going to want to miss our conversation. Make sure and tune in tomorrow and subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of these episodes. You can do that using the subscription links for iTunes or Stitcher over at TomWoodsRadio.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
The Tom Woods Show.